Welcome to the Happy Mindset. Today's episode is episode number 73, and today's episode title is called The Boudoir Photographer. So today I'm joined by Marina Meier. Marina is a boudoir photographer, and today's episode we explore how she arrived at this career choice for herself. Marina is originally from Kazakhstan, which is a former country of the Soviet Union. On today's episode, she talks a little bit about the mindset shift she had to go on from moving country from Kazakhstan to Germany. She talks about how she arrived at boudoir photography, some of the things she had to overcome. She came from a very conservative background. So boudoir photography, I learned a lot from listening to her. I never really came across boudoir photography before. In my understanding from speaking to her, it seemed to be about creating photographs of people which show their natural beauty, imperfections and all. So it's also an erotic and a sensual kind of experience as well at times. So I learned a lot from talking to Marina. She also recommended two very good books for me, which I have been listening to on Audible. So it's the first one was actually sorry, no, I bought the first one in Estonia. I happened to see it in a bookshop. It was one of those things where I saw it and I was told about it. So wabi sabi. So I've been reading that. That explores the Japanese word wabi sabi and the meaning that it can have for people, and just the sense of it being an indescribable thing. The other book she recommended was Selfie. Selfie is a really interesting book. It talks about the mind, and it talks about how the Western mind and the Eastern mind evolved over time. And it's a very fascinating read. It delves on different topics like suicide and different things of like why the self destructs in a incomprehensible way. So you learn a lot from listening to it about the mind and how it can trick us and different things just to be aware of that we take for granted today in the Western world and in the Eastern world as well. So yeah, that's often a little bit of a tangent, but she recommended those two books to me, so it was a great conversation. I got a lot from talking to her and her recommendations, and I hope you get a lot from this conversation too. She talks a lot about the mindset, psychology of her journey, and as well the art as well. I want to help myself understand the art behind photography as well, and Marina was a very good person to talk to about that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us today, Marina.
Thank you, Dennis, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to
Pleasure.
be here.
Thank you. So my first question is, who are you and what are you doing in the world today?
Who I am? Oh my gosh, that's a straight away the very deep question. Who are you? I'm a Marina. I'm a professional photographer, specialized in boudoir photography. My background is Russian German, and now I live in Australia. Uh, yeah, that's me
Hmm.
in a
Interesting.
nutshell, or
What,
part of me.
yeah. What's boudoir photography?
Basically, I photograph people, mostly women, naked or half naked. Um, yes, of course, it's not all. It's boudoir photography. It's about, for me, it's about reconnection with yourself, accepting yourself and your body in a state as it is right now, with all the flaws that society tells us are flaws. Doesn't matter what age, size, or shape is. Loving it, much, but most, not really wholeheartedly, but at least accepting the body as it is, accepting your sexuality, and it's about expressing sensuality.
Hmm.
That's for me boudoir photography.
So what led you to boudoir photography in particular?
Um, I think it's a kind of long story. So it's started when I decided to do photography. I wanted to find a place, a studio where I can do internship to have a look if it's the right thing for me. And it was about 18 years ago. So when I walked into a studio, one studio, opened the door, and the first thing I saw on the opposite of the entrance was this beautiful, huge wall art with a pregnant woman, and she was naked, and I was shocked. I was 20 years old, and because of my background, I grew up quite a conservative background, and nudity and sexuality were taboos, never talked about. It was seen dirty, and so for me it was shock seeing somebody exposing themselves naked, and for everyone to see. Then I met the photographer who was working in the studio, and she was a lovely lady who I felt safe and trusted. When I started to work in the studio, I started to meet people, everyday people who were mothers and teachers and doctors, and coming from all the walks of life. I was getting to know them and their story, and I realized then that there's nothing bad and dirty in boudoir photography or naked body, or it is beautiful and unique, and it comes in different sizes and shapes, and it was fascinating.
Could you like describe that process, like when you first saw that picture, and like you were coming from your background, you were you grew up in the Soviet Union, wasn't it? That's
Yes.
and so coming to this, then you've got all this kind of just conditioning about it. Like, what was the process like of you letting go of that conditioning? Like, was it through meeting the people, hearing the stories, doing your work? Did it gradually start coming apart, or can you describe that kind of process?
Well, I guess there were so many factors coming together. So we were just recently moved from Kazakhstan to Germany, and everything was new, everything was different. So it was not just this part in my life that was different and new for me. And because also when we moved, I was so looking forward to our new life, for a chance for me to study, and I came really open-minded to Germany, and I wanted to, not just see, that's us, that's the way we live our life, and that's them, and that's the way they live their life. I wanted to get, pick little bits and pieces that fit my life and mix them. And so when I walked into the studio, I was shocked, but I also was really keen to, to study photography, and or at least to, have a trial and see if it's the right thing for me. But then also the photographer who was there, my mentor, she was very kind, and just the way she greeted me, I felt very safe, that I kind of more or less forgotten about this image, and it didn't matter so much. And I think there were challenges every day in my life, that I was confronted with things that were unusual, out of my comfort zone, and I guess I did make this decision almost every day. Do I stay open and first look at it and see if it's something that's for me or not, and make decision later? And that was the moment like this when I decided, I want to see what it is, and then make my mind about this, if I like it or not. And meeting the people and getting to hear their stories and being trusted, that was a big thing as well. When the clients would come, because it was a traditional studio, a part of the Boudoir photography, it was quite traditional studio. We did weddings and kids, and photograph kids and families, and so then I would meet the clients when they would come, for example, for a wedding, and then later, a year later, they would come for pregnancy images, and then later they would come with a baby. So there were the connection to them already as you're not a normal in a normal frame, kind of, so a traditional way. So you would meet them as a Mr. and Mrs. And then there's a child, and then the story. He's a doctor, she's a homestay mom, and so on. So there was this. Oh, they are people like everyone, like me, like you. And then the woman might become some stage and book a Boudoir session where she would like to give these images to her partner for anniversary or birthday gift, or not necessarily partner. They were stories that are sad stories about divorce and some health issues that are transformative when a woman gets breast cancer, and that's something she wants to do for herself. That was kind of a big thing for me that made this change in my life, the change in the view of life and human body and nakedness and sexuality.
Were you always like open-minded when you were growing up in Kazakhstan, or was that something you developed as you moved the country?
I think it's hard to tell. Was I always open-minded? I wanted, like most of the kids, be the good girl and do right things, and felt maybe conditioned that the parental love was depending on how good I behaved and how good I'm at school. But at the same time, I was maybe a little bit rebellious as well. And the part also why I'm doing the boudoir photography right now is when I was a teenager, that's where I realized how differently society treats men and women. And especially how different society is treating men and women in Kazakhstan, or like in my environment, my family, and that I felt like so unfair. And that's maybe also one of the little reasons why I'm doing boudoir photography, because for me it's empowering. Most of my clients are women. I do photograph men as well and couples, but most of my clients are women, and I feel, even I don't like the word empowering because I feel like it's overused recently a lot, but it is, for the sake of not knowing a better word for it, I would call it empowering. That's also one of the reasons, because I felt that women are, especially at that time where I was growing up, were under a lot of pressure, and basically was, you need to find a good man, marry him, and be a good wife and mother, and education and everything didn't matter much, or personality, or living the life the way you wanted to live, being different to others, having different sexuality was not acceptable at all. And that's where I dedicate my work to. I help people to accept their sexuality and sensuality and discover it sometimes, and sometimes reconnect to it. There are many different stories.
When did you start realizing that that's what your work and what you were about?
Probably when the first clients started crying when they were seeing the images, but crying like happy tears, and sharing the stories, and how I felt, that I was giving my work more meaning. I know when I graduated and I was one of the best in my class, I also received a grant for further education. But I was so kind of unhappy, almost depressed. I was crying a lot, and I didn't understand why. Until then, later I understood, like, I didn't feel that my work is creating photos, creating memories wasn't as meaningful enough. I was thinking, I should have become a doctor or a teacher or something that the world needs, and not a luxury service. But then seeing clients, the change from conscious and nervous to being so relaxed and accepting themselves, being themselves. So creating a safe environment that they could be themselves and they could be happy and they could see themselves in a different way. That's where I realized I actually do something meaningful.
Mm-hmm. So is that where your sense of happiness comes from doing from feeling like you're doing meaningful work and you've got that going? Or where does your sense of happiness come from?
Yes, that's where my sense of happiness comes. Doing something meaningful, helping others. I find it's kind of, might be an egoistical thought, like that brings me happiness, that's my happiness. But at the same time, I think it's a win-win situation. That you do something good, you see it, and you receive the energy back, and then that makes you happy as well.
And you see the impact. So, like for you starting off in Germany, like you said as well, you didn't have the language at the start. How did you start forging your path in Germany when initially you didn't really have German and you didn't have English as well? You said English is an important language in Germany as well.
So we were lucky enough that when we moved to Germany, there was this program for immigrants from ex-Soviet Union who had the German background, which my family did. So we went to a German language school, my dad and I, and then because I wanted to study psychology, which is another story, for studying at university, there was another course that was extra for young people wanting to study. So I think I went first 6 months. I went to a German language school. Then another 4 months I went to German language school for young people, and it was just diving in, and that was the environment. Like I could speak Russian with my parents and a couple of friends or family members, but everything else was, in German. And I was so, I think after I finished school in Kazakhstan, for 1 year, I didn't have anything to do. So I tried to study at university, but the fees were so high that my parents could not afford it. And we were living remote in this tiny village. So it was kind of complicated. The thing was that I spent at home for a year where most of my peers were studying, doing something. And when we moved to Germany, I was so hungry for knowledge, for progress, for doing something in my life that I just dived in. And so I was nervous and conscious about my language knowledge, but I just, tried to talk with my feet and my face expressions and whatever limited language knowledge I had. So to communicate with people in all possible life situations. And then when I went to school, I was just, accelerating it and helping that. I was saying, oh my God, how great it is you can communicate with so many people. And I think that was also a big part of it.
So did you start learning about body language at the same time there, it sounds like? Or were you aware of body language and the importance of being expressive and stuff before you started learning German?
No, I don't know. Not consciously, I would say. But it's like when you got something, you need something to do. You got your family at home, your brother and mother and father and the grandparents, and then there is issue with water or whatever it is, and then you go to the shop or where, and you have to fix this situation. And if you're the one who got the most ability in the language, which is still extremely limited, but from the whole family, and there was this responsibility, and you got to do what you got to do, and then you try to explain. And if you don't know what the tap called in German, then you try to draw, or you try to explain, or you use your hands, you use everything to communicate with the person.
Yeah, that's it. So what drew you? You mentioned psychology as well. What drew you to psychology? What was your interest sparked by?
Um, to be honest, I don't know exactly what it was. It was just fascinating. Like, I think realization at some stage, again, in teenager years, realization that the life is not black and white. The people are not good or bad people. The good people do bad things, and bad things happen to good people, and bad people do good things, and good things happen to them as well. So I think that was the realization. And then also the curiosity, why do we behave the way we behave? Why do we do the things we do? Why do we say the things we do? Why do we fall in love? Why we do pull out of the love, and so on? Why some people are kind and nice and other are stubborn and nasty? So that was the fascinating for me about psychology.
So, like, where did those questions lead you then when you were asking those questions? Did they lead you to the boudoir photography immediately, or was there some intermediary things that happened before that?
Well, they're totally independent. I mean, the question about psychology, they were in when I was, 15, 16, 17. But then moving to Germany and all the language things and then the school things, and it was too much. And I also don't know what's happened to my brain in that time as well. When I remember when I was 15 writing an essay at school about my life, how I see my life, I was saying, I want to have a career, I want to study, and I want to be independent. I don't want to be like most women in my life who I know who got married quite early and became, wife and mother, and partly unhappy. And so that's all I did not want. But then we moved to Germany, and I married when I was 20, just before I started to study photography. And that's also was where just before that, I thought, oh, study psychology, it takes so much time. I would have to go back to school to catch up on 2 more years at school, and then university, and it takes so long. Oh my gosh, I want to earn money, I want to be independent right now, but at the same time I got married. So it's kind of contradictory being independent, or it was for me at least. So because it's not like I believe when you're married you're not independent, not at all. But at that stage in my life, it was basically finding a good man who will take care of you and the family financially, and other things. So that's for me why I think that was contradiction, saying I want to be independent and then getting married. Because my ex-husband was also from Kazakhstan, and he was living in Germany, so we had quite similar background, how we grew up and what the values were, how a family life looks like, what it means to get married and live together and become a family. So basically it was more okay, if I can't do psychology, then let's do something else, something that still inspire you and make it life. If you spend so many hours and years working in some field, which for me also was at that time, if you learn something, you study something, you start to work, it's something you do for your whole life. It's not like now we see so often people changing careers, people changing the workplaces, and also things they're doing quite frequently. And at that stage in Kazakhstan, or still in Germany, was even like 20 years ago, it was quite same. So people would usually work at the same place 20, 30 years. And that was, I was conscious about as well, choosing my path in life was, or choosing my trade was very important, that I choose something that I enjoy as well. And then the photography came as idea because as a child I was quite creative. I loved doing drawing things, and even wanted to become a cartoonist. And then so photography came as a something nearest. And boudoir photography, as I said before, it wasn't at all on my radar at that time. I didn't even know that existed.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I glad I did choose this part, and I see a lot of psychology when I do my work. That is like working with people. There is psychology involved, even if you do not realize it.
Yeah, could you explain that? Like, what are some of the psychology you see to like photography and helping people to, I guess, share their story in pictures as well? Is that some of what you do as
Um,
well? Like, do you help people to share their story through the different pictures you take of them? Like, are you conscious of that, or like, yeah, could you explain the psychology part to what you do?
it is partly to share the story. It is a process itself before the shoot, during the shoot, preparation to the shoot. Um, I have My policy is I do not photograph anyone now who I haven't met before or haven't had conversation before, because the connection and trust is very important part of the process. And I want my clients to feel safe to be themselves, to express themselves. And as I say, so often they came from a background, where they experienced something traumatic. It could be divorce, a breakup, it could be health issues. So they could be some trauma from the past, not accepting their sexuality, and they all need a safe environment to be themselves. And that's why the clients who choose boudoir photography, they are already on the path of self-love and acceptance, and that just one step on it. And that's something special, almost magical for me, to see the photograph of yourself, because we do not see ourselves in the mirror the way everybody else sees us. I mean, beside of a day is long, and we do express different emotions, and depending on what angle you look at a person, this person looks differently anytime. A photograph is just a moment in time, a little tiny moment in time. But still, when we look at ourselves, we see ourselves in the mirror, and it is a mirror way. When somebody else look at you, they see the way, the sight of your face is different than you see yourself. So it's for anyone, it's more or less a bit weird to look at the photograph of yourself, because it looks differently than what you see in the mirror. But the people who used to a lot of selfies, and like in this generation, when we bombarded with all the photographs, we see ourselves more often on selfies, on photographs. But before that, it was even weird to see yourself. Doesn't matter how nice you look, it's just still tiny bit weird, because it's a different way you look at yourself in the mirror. And it's something also healing in when there are photographs of you. So there's a person who's photographing you. You're being vulnerable and open. If you're being vulnerable and open, letting somebody look at you and letting yourself to be seen, that can be healing. Because if somebody got this trauma, abusive relationship, when they felt they are not good enough, they're nothing, when they are constantly would get this message, you're nothing, you're nothing, you're nothing, no one wants you. And then at some, going through process of healing and doing this step of choosing to do boudoir photography in a safe environment, when you are seen, and then getting tangible reminder of it, you are enough, you're more than enough, and you're being seen by somebody with loving eyes. And then you can start to see yourself, or with loving eyes as well.
Hmm. Do you see a big contrast between the work you do and like just like the mainstream? Do you see any messages, like any contrast in the messages between like what you're doing there and just like what you see in society on a daily basis and in the social platforms and stuff?
Yes, I do. So it was also a part of my journey as a photographer and learning experience when I've been working in a studio as a manager and a teacher for 4 or 5 years, and it was a digital era, which still now as well, but when I burnt out, and I realized, why did I burn out? Because it wasn't so much about the connection with people, it was about pushing the button and creating images one after another, and that sitting in front of a computer with the clients, showing them the images you just created, and hearing the client to criticize themselves in a really abusive way. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm old. Hearing that constantly from almost each client, and then them asking to make them look younger and slimmer, that would be everyday basis of my work. And I would spend hours and hours editing these images, and then look at them and look at the client and see two different person, editing the soul out of people, because I believe the wrinkles and all the flaws that society tell us that is not acceptable, like having wrinkles for women. And before that, I was thinking, no one can tell me how I feel about myself. But when you get these messages frequently everywhere, it's in magazines, it's on social media, Instagram and Facebook, it's on TV, everywhere. You see the billboards, you see the advertisement for creams, face creams that make you look 10 years younger or remove the wrinkles, that the message we're receiving that being old is not good. Showing the aging on your skin as a person is something not good. You have to be ashamed of, you have to hide it, you have to buy all these expensive creams, and then you will be looking young and acceptable, and you will be loved and you will be good enough. And that's what I think most of my clients and everyone is exposed to. And that's why with the digital photography there are also possibilities when photographers advertise, be a star for a day, be a model for a day, feel like a princess, and so on, and doing heavy makeovers, and then also spending hours retouching these images, airbrushing them. We all know that the models in the magazines don't look the way that these models look in the life, in the real life. We kind of all understand that the images on social media, all these styled images and curated images and picked, done 10, 20 images, and you pick the one that's the best and you put it on Instagram and telling everyone, look how perfect my life is. That it's not the real life, that's not true. But still, we compare ourselves, all life and ourselves, our appearance, to all these perfect, edited, corrected images on social media. And that makes us feel terrible. It makes us feel inadequate and not good enough. So that's when I burned out because of that as well. So we were talking before that I realized, how meaningful my work is for women when I photograph a boudoir. That was the opposite of meaningful. That was about appearance. It was the English word,
Empty.
vanity.
What's that?
About the vanity.
Vanity, yeah.
And as I say, I was editing out the soul of the people out of the images. and that was the opposite of meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
They were superficial, and that was for me the crucial moment where I was even thinking about quitting photography completely or redefining it for myself. And that's where kind of got back to the beginnings when I first walked into this one studio with the naked woman on the wall with a wall art of a naked woman, and why I really loved the photography at the time. What did inspire me, what gave me so much joy, it's a deep connection and trust from my clients and the time I would spend with them, and what, you know, the results, how that were affecting them. That's where I also realized I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to photograph kids or families or weddings anymore. I really want to do boudoir only. I want to spend time with each client individual. I want to get to know them, and I want to capture the uniqueness. I want to help them either, you know, discover a newer side of themselves through the shoot, or reconnect to themselves, to the part that they feel like they lost by becoming a wife and a mother and caring for many years for other people, or adapting to their new life situation and so on. So that for me was also not heavily editing the images, not altering the bodies, because what brings it, it gives me, or what would give it to them if I photograph them in an edit. They would look at the images and think, oh wow, I look so 5 years younger and 10 kilos lighter. But then, you know, deep inside they know that's not the truth. That's how they look on the image. But in real life, if they're honest to themselves, they know that's not true. So it's just getting to validation and comments on Facebook saying, oh my God, you look amazing. But everyone knows, it's like with the new dress, the king's new dress, the fairy tale. Or
Did the emperor's did the emperor's clothes?
I don't know, like it's difficult for me because I know this fairy tale in Russian, and I know that it exists in German as well and in English, but I don't know, like translating it. I tried to translate word to words, but yeah, when the king got his dress, which wasn't dress, he was naked, and everyone just was afraid to tell, you know, that he is actually naked, and everyone saying, wow, his dress is so beautiful. And that's how I feel it's what's happening now when we edit our pictures heavily using Photoshop or any filters and stuff, and then posting these images, and everyone says, oh my God, you look amazing. And you think, oh, thank you. But in real life, everyone knows, you know, that that's not how you look, that you use the filter heavily to edit his image, and the persons who commenting and giving you compliments with his image knows exactly that you don't look in real life like this.
Yeah, it's just making us more neurotic and insecure, I think, in the long term.
Yeah.
So, like, did it take long, that time frame from, like, so you were photographing there for a while, it seemed like you felt empty inside, and it was just like editing, and you burnt yourself out, and you decided you were either going to quit photography or redefine it. Did it take you long before you walked into that place where you saw the woman on the wall, then the boudoir photography? You remember, did that take long for that to come out?
You mean from burning out to remembering the first day?
Also, did you come across that woman before you burnt out? Like, you know, the woman where you, did that come after, or did that come before you burnt out?
That was the very first encounter with photo studio. The woman on the wall, the wall art of a naked woman, that was the very first time when I walked in the studio when I wanted to become a photographer.
Okay.
Then I saw this image of the naked woman, and you know, the first instinct was for me to turn around and run away, because, you know, that was almost 20 years ago.
I like that though, because, like, so you were doing something, you felt like there wasn't much meaning to it, and the meaning and the connection was hidden by something that you were confronted by. Because I think I don't think
Yeah.
this is an unusual thing. I think a lot of us are confronted by stuff, but we don't notice that meaning and connection on the other side, because we don't allow ourselves to open our mind to the possibility that there's something beyond that conditioned view of the world. So I like
Yeah.
what happened there.
Yeah, so it was kind of full circle, you know, when I started to study photography, that was the first thing that I saw, this image of a woman who was naked, and I was confronted, but then I stayed there because I really was keen to get the chance of internship in a photo studio, and that's where like my world completely turned upside down. And then I loved photography for so many years, and then on the way somewhere I started to lose this passion and love because of so many things coming together. It was supposed to be my journey, I guess. So then the digital photography came in, the editing and so on, and then moving forward, I mean, there is personal stuff going on in my life as well, that I got divorced and I went away. I went to Australia for a year, traveling around and learning a new language and kind of starting my life from zero again, and being open and experiencing new things that were outside of my comfort zone, but you know, not in my professional world anymore, but in my personal life. And then coming back to Germany and starting this job, not with my best friend, you know, my mentor, who became then my best friend also, but working in a different environment as well. And that led to burnout as well. And then when I was thinking about quitting photography, because I just could not continue the way, and I just felt so sad, and I felt like, oh, is it so many years wasted of my life? What else could I do? What else could I imagine doing? And there was nothing. There was nothing that was interesting me at that time. But then I think there was a technique that I heard from somewhere, I don't know where, that, you know, just think about what does give you joy in the work you do. You know, because it wasn't just that I was coming to studio to my work and hated everything and everyone, that there were still moments of joy in between. I just needed to maybe stay still and think about them. And I just was so overwhelmed with all the negative feeling, with all the feeling of, you know, I hate this job, I can't do it anymore, that I was blind to the positive parts of it.
Shifting your
And
focus.
so when I sat still and I thought about this, this technique helped me to redefine it for me, or not completely pushing it away from me, but redefining it for me. And that's where I was thinking about, well, hang on, what was so profound when I started studying photography? What was so different? What did give me joy? And at first I was sort of like everything. I did love kids, photographing kids. I did love photographing families and weddings. And why do I hate weddings so much now? But it was more, well, what did change from then? How the way weddings were 20 years ago, the way we used to photograph weddings 20 years ago, are different to ways we do it now. And the same is with the portraits with family and kids. It was for me like 5 years ago when I had this burnout, it was about rushing, making, you know, in a short amount of time, photographing as many photos as possible, as many people as possible. It was more money, more people, more photographing, more of everything. Also, you needed to create, you know, this latest background or special effects, and it was a big competition between studios, and also the competition against mobile phones and digital cameras that were so accessible for everyone. There was so much fear for professional photographers. You know, they had this status quo before. In the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, and even the beginning of the 90s, as many people could afford this expensive professional camera, but even if they did, not many people could afford to spend so much time learning it and getting the experience to create amazing photography. But also the photography is not so much about the technique, and it's more about the connection with the person you photograph. I found with the digital photography, it wasn't anymore about the connection, and it wasn't so much about the expensive camera gear. It was about shoot 100, 200 images. You might get lucky to get 1 or 2 great shots, and then you can doctor a little bit on them using some filters and editing, and voila, you got something beautiful. Beautiful, flawless looking, younger or whatever. That was my life at that time as a photographer when I was burning out. It was just too much, too overwhelming, too little meaning or no meaning at all in the work doing. And it was, now back to the roots, back to the beginning, and finding where was the joy, what was so meaningful, and how can I recreate it now.
That's really cool. So, like, in order to redefine it, you had to shift your focus from the overwhelming negative to what were the positives that brought you to photography in the first place, and then start focusing on that. That's kind of the process there, was it?
Yes. And I have to say, it wasn't easy. It wasn't, because there was a lot of fear in it as well. Like how just a step going from photographing kids and families and weddings and boudoir as well to only photographing boudoir. There were the questions like, will I get enough clients? Because the message I was receiving before, you need to offer as much as possible. You need to be adaptive to the market and or offer more different things that you can, create more different things that you can offer to your clients to get as many clients as possible to survive, to get enough money. And also going, not just doing boudoir, but also only doing boudoir in black and white and not photographing in color anymore. That was another factor that I felt deep inside I really, really wanted to get there, but I really felt so scared that, well, you're excluding so many people, potential clients. And then the next step was reducing editing to a bare minimum, using Photoshop only to remove maybe a bruise or a pimple. That's something that is temporary there, but not editing any wrinkles or scars or anything that is permanent there, that is a part of the personality, that's part of a person living life, that's the proof for the, like a roadmap or the expressing of the character. They're all the smiles and the tears that are in their face.
Mm-hmm. So you're going against like the conventional wisdom of the day. You're pretty much kind of going against the flow, against the stream, I guess.
Yeah.
Was it difficult as well, like what people would think? Was there people in your life that didn't understand what you were doing and stuff? Like, did you find that frustrating if there were?
Yes, well, actually, my parents are not exactly the people who understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. They kind of accept that. We don't talk much about this, but it's okay. There are people also, when I got to networking events and people ask, what do you do? And I say, I'm a boudoir photographer. Some people don't know what that means at all. Some people do know, or they think they know, but I can tell, when I see the expression in their face and their reaction and few things they tell after that introduction, that they sometimes think it's something Playboy style photography.
Do some people kind of glaze over and not listen when they hear like nude or whatever? Do they have certain assumptions and they glaze over, or?
Yes, or well, they're different directions. A woman often would say, "Oh my God, why would somebody, you know, get themselves half naked in front of a camera?" Or I would never do that. Or I wish I have done it 20 years ago. Man's reaction is often, I guess, because they maybe do not understand what it is, exactly what it's about. Reaction is also mixed. Sometimes they try to make some jokes about it. And even when I try to explain, my philosophy in that I don't edit much, I really want to capture them as they are. I would get a lot of requests, can you make me look like this? Can you make me look like that? And it's all in a kind of joking way, but for me, I just see often there is insecurity, there is something they feel confronted with, and sometimes just they were maybe not never knew about this and never thought about this. It's totally new for them, and they just for the first encounter with his philosophy and his idea about accepting your body and being yourself, and having this experience of being yourself in a safe environment.
Mm. Do you have any book recommendation? You recommended two books to me. I started listening to Selfie, which is very interesting because, like we're talking about there, the just the way we look at the world, we take it for granted that this is reality. Like, I think they mentioned something about they're talking about how the Western mind evolved and the Eastern mind evolved, and just the assumptions that we take for granted nowadays kind of opens your eyes to that. So glad you recommended that. Do you have any book recommendation for people listening in?
Yes, one book is really like I want everybody to read this book. It's called The Beauty Myth from Naomi Wolf, I think. I'm not the best one to remember the names, but I'm quite sure it's Naomi Wolf. The Beauty Myth was written, I think, in late 80s, so it's quite old book. And a quite big book. It's a very well researched book, and I was reading it or listening to audio version of it, and there were some moments I wanted to cry, some moments I felt helpless and depressed, and some moments I felt I really need to do something. Yeah, it's everybody needs to read this book, The Beauty Myth.
So yeah, it sounds like an interesting book again. And do you have any actual final message for anybody listening in and they're looking to, I guess, explore more of a creative path in life, or they want to redefine what they're doing right now as well?
A message for somebody who would like to redefine their life. I think the first message would be, I feel like everybody feels like we're looking at others. We feel, oh, they got their shit together, and I don't. And I think in reality, everybody feels the same. When I look at a person next to me and I think this person got their shit together, this person probably looks at me and thinks the same thing. It is okay not to know where to go, not having a clue, which direction to choose. It's totally okay. It's totally okay not to have all your shit together. And I think we overthinking often. I think we're overthinking. Like maybe take everything with a grain of salt. Not to take everything, and especially ourselves, too seriously. Sometimes it's good to let it go and just be.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And so that's that's I think that's would be my advice, how to choose your path and how to redefine yourself. When we stop overthinking and go with the flow a little bit, that's where we can see, what is true for us. Just be a little bit open-minded, experiencing new things.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm still on my journey. I feel like I experienced a lot, and I came a big way with my journey in photography. I feel proud in one moment, but the next time I look at my work and I think, oh, you could improve so much. And they're constantly up and downs, and that's I guess that's life, right?
Yeah, that's it. So how would somebody find you if they wanted to work with you?
They can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and also on a website. It's www.photographer-marina.com, and the same for the Facebook and Instagram. It's Photographer Marina.
Perfect. Cool. They should check that stuff out. So thanks again for sharing your story, Marina. It was great hearing like the journey you've gone on, moving from Kazakhstan to Germany and overcoming language barriers, understanding body language better, psychology, photographing people, finding your niche as well out of like following your own path in life and being willing to go upstream as well. So thanks for sharing. There's lots of value there. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dennis.
Pleasure. So until next time, have fun and enjoy the process.
Thank you.